Drake just escalated the drama again, and this time it's bigger than music. It's legal. Reports reveal that he's officially filed an appeal in the ongoing Not Like Us lawsuit involving UMG and Kendrick Lamar, and the implications could ripple across hip-hop culture, the music industry, and his own legacy. What started as a single diss track has now evolved into a full-blown legal saga, and every move Drake makes is under intense scrutiny. Fans and critics alike are asking the same question: will this appeal protect Drake, or will it backfire spectacularly? On one hand, an appeal is a calculated legal strategy. It signals that Drake is not willing to let the dismissal or the controversy around the song define him or limit his influence. On the other hand, filing an appeal keeps the conflict in public view and opens the door for more scrutiny. Every court filing, every headline, and every social media reaction adds fuel to the fire, ensuring that Not Like Us stays relevant long after it would have faded naturally. Hip-hop has always thrived on narrative, perception, and timing. Battles used to be settled on records, in interviews, or on stage. Now they play out in courtrooms, and the audience watches every step. The problem is that legal moves are slow, public, and permanent. Unlike a punchline or a diss verse, filings cannot be deleted, edited, or remixed into a viral moment. That permanence can magnify criticism and make even strategic choices look reactive or desperate. If Drake's appeal is perceived as overreaching, it risks undermining the very control he's trying to assert. Fans may interpret it as proof that the song hit harder than expected, while critics could frame it as a mismatch between cultural influence and legal strategy. In a world where perception often outweighs proof, this appeal may do more harm than good, keeping the conversation alive, but not necessarily in Drake's favor. The news of Drake filing an appeal over the Not Like Us lawsuit involving UMG and Kendrick Lamar instantly sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community. What started as a diss track that dominated streaming platforms, TikTok challenges, and meme culture has now grown into a high-stakes legal confrontation. And Drake's appeal adds a new layer of complexity that could redefine both his career and the broader landscape of music litigation. Unlike most moments in hip-hop, where conflicts are primarily handled through lyrical exchanges, social media, and cultural dialogue, this scenario moves the dispute from performance and perception into the rigid, formalized world of courts, filings, and precedents. The appeal signals that Drake is determined to continue the fight, but it also raises the risk of escalating scrutiny, opening doors for criticism, and keeping the controversy alive in a way that may not benefit him. Drake's decision to appeal comes after an initial dismissal, which some interpreted as a victory for UMG and Kendrick Lamar's team. A dismissal in the legal context usually signals that the court did not find sufficient merit to proceed, whether due to procedural reasons or substantive arguments. By filing an appeal, Drake is effectively challenging that judgment, asserting that the lower court's decision overlooked key aspects of his claims. This move is far from unusual in litigation, especially for high-profile individuals. But in the context of hip-hop, it is unprecedented in its visibility and cultural impact. Every filing becomes public record, and in an era of instant social media dissemination, each legal move is dissected, debated, and transformed into viral content. Fans, media outlets, and critics alike are now interpreting Drake's appeal not just as a legal strategy, but as a cultural statement that will influence how this dispute is remembered. The timing of the appeal is critical. Not Like Us had already generated significant buzz months before the appeal, saturating streaming platforms and online communities. The song's virality created a narrative momentum that a dismissal might have slowed, but Drake's appeal ensures the story remains active. The moment has now shifted from a single musical release into an ongoing saga that intersects law, culture, and audience engagement. Legal experts note that appeals are inherently slow processes, often taking months or even years to resolve. This delay ensures that Drake and Kendrick Lamar remain central topics in hip-hop conversations, social media trends, and entertainment news cycles, extending the lifespan of the conflict far beyond a typical song release cycle. The appeal also highlights the growing tension between artistic expression and legal accountability in modern music. In previous eras, diss tracks were evaluated primarily through their artistic merit, cultural resonance, and the reactions of peers and fans. The audience acted as judge and jury, and the consequences were mostly reputational or social. Today, high-profile artists operate in a more complex ecosystem, where words on a track can have measurable financial, contractual, and legal consequences. Drake's appeal illustrates the reality that what begins as artistic commentary can rapidly escalate into formal disputes with lasting implications. The lines between personal expression, business interests, and cultural influence have blurred, and the stakes for public figures like Drake are higher than ever. Audience perception plays an enormous role in this unfolding story. Fans of both Drake and Kendrick Lamar have taken sides, with social media platforms acting as amplification machines. TikTok clips dissecting lyrics, Twitter threads debating intent, Instagram posts highlighting reactions, and YouTube videos analyzing cultural implications all contribute to shaping the narrative. The algorithms on these platforms reward engagement, meaning that the more controversial or emotionally charged content spreads, the further it reaches. In effect, the audience is no longer passive. Listeners actively construct meaning, interpret motives, and reinforce narratives. This participatory culture ensures that the appeal will be interpreted through multiple lenses, some supportive of Drake, others critical, long before any court ruling is finalized. Critics argue that the appeal may backfire precisely because it keeps the controversy in the spotlight. In hip-hop culture, perceived confidence and resilience are often valued more than legal victories. By filing an appeal, Drake risks framing the dispute as ongoing damage control, potentially undermining the cultural power of the song itself. While legal strategy may protect him in a formal sense, public perception operates differently. Fans might interpret the appeal as a sign that the original track hit too close to home, reinforcing the power of Kendrick Lamar's influence. Furthermore, each headline, legal snippet, or social media debate renews attention to the conflict, ensuring that the song and the controversy remain intertwined. This creates a paradox. The more Drake seeks to assert control through formal channels, the more the narrative may appear reactive or defensive. The legal complexity of this situation cannot be understated. Appeals require careful examination of prior filings, legal arguments, and procedural correctness. Drake's legal team is likely focusing on areas such as alleged copyright infringement, damages, and misrepresentation, but every element is scrutinized publicly. Legal documents are dissected, headlines summarize complex points, and fans speculate about strategy, intent, and outcome. Unlike other forms of communication, these filings are permanent, creating a lasting record of Drake's position. This permanence both protects and exposes him, providing legal clarity while offering critics material to challenge his approach. In a culture driven by rapid consumption and instant judgment, the appeal transforms from a procedural act into a highly visible cultural artifact. Another consideration is how this appeal affects industry relationships. Drake is not only an artist, but also a major stakeholder in a network of collaborators, labels, and sponsors. The legal spotlight may influence business partnerships, endorsements, and professional relationships. Artists who observe the proceedings may recalibrate their own approach to conflict, assessing whether pursuing legal channels strengthens or weakens influence. In this sense, Drake's appeal becomes a signal not just to Kendrick Lamar or UMG, but to the entire music industry, illustrating how artists navigate power, risk, and accountability in the modern era. Historically, hip-hop has celebrated resilience and the ability to thrive under pressure. Diss tracks, battles, and public exchanges have long been arenas for proving skill, reputation, and strategic thinking. By moving the dispute into legal spaces, Drake challenges these cultural norms. Fans and critics are now forced to evaluate his approach according to both legal reasoning and cultural expectations. This dual lens creates tension, as actions that might be sound in court could be misinterpreted in the court of public opinion. The challenge lies in balancing legal strategy with maintaining credibility, authenticity, and influence within the culture that elevated him. Moreover, the appeal sheds light on the changing nature of conflict resolution in hip-hop. Traditional battles were resolved through music, social interaction, or performance. Today, high-profile disputes intersect with corporate interests, intellectual property, and formal legal processes. The Drake-Kendrick Lamar situation exemplifies this evolution, highlighting the increased stakes, broader consequences, and heightened visibility of modern artistic conflicts. As a result, audience engagement, media coverage, and algorithmic amplification play equally important roles in determining outcomes as formal rulings do. The long-term implications for Drake's career are significant. A successful appeal may protect his interests, reaffirm his control over his work, and reinforce his position in the industry. However, a protracted legal battle or unfavorable outcome could alter public perception, feed critics, and affect cultural influence. In hip-hop, legacy is shaped as much by perception and narrative as by actual accomplishments. The way audiences interpret Drake's appeal, whether as a calculated move, an overreaction, or a necessary defense, will influence how this moment is remembered and discussed for years to come. Finally, the interplay between music, law, and culture in this scenario demonstrates the unique pressures faced by modern artists. Drake operates in a complex ecosystem where a single track can catalyze virality, provoke corporate scrutiny, and trigger legal proceedings. The appeal transforms a moment that might have been confined to charts, streams, and fan debates into a prolonged saga with multifaceted consequences. Every social media post, meme, or news headline contributes to the evolving narrative, illustrating that in today's music industry, cultural perception, legal strategy, and audience engagement are inseparable. Concludes by framing the appeal not simply as a legal maneuver, but as a cultural event with ongoing consequences. It establishes that Drake's decision to challenge the dismissal is about more than the courts. It is about control, perception, and legacy in an era where music, social media, and law are deeply intertwined. The story will continue to unfold across multiple platforms, and the outcome will depend not only on formal rulings, but also on how audiences, media, and peers interpret each move. The appeal has turned the Drake-Kendrick Lamar saga into more than just a conflict over a song. It has become a case study in how modern hip-hop navigates culture, law, and audience influence. Once a track dominates streaming platforms, social media, and memes, it is no longer simply a piece of music. It becomes a cultural artifact. When a high-profile artist like Drake initiates legal action, that artifact is reframed through new layers of scrutiny. Every detail, the lyrics, the timing of the release, the intent behind certain lines, is now analyzed in multiple contexts simultaneously: artistic, legal, and cultural. For listeners, this multi-layered framing creates a situation where engagement goes beyond liking, sharing, or streaming. It becomes an act of interpretation, a way to participate in shaping a narrative that will endure in public memory. One of the most immediate effects of the appeal is the amplification of public attention. Social media algorithms thrive on sustained engagement, controversy, and debate. Every news story about the appeal, every fan reaction video, and every commentary thread fuels the cycle. Platforms reward content that sparks strong emotional responses, meaning the lawsuit will remain central to online conversations for the foreseeable future. What might have been a story confined to legal circles is now visible in comment sections, TikTok compilations, YouTube breakdowns, and Twitter debates. Each post reinforces the perception that this is a defining moment in Drake's career, whether for positive or negative reasons. Even casual listeners who may have ignored the original song are now drawn into the conversation through algorithmic visibility. The complexity of public perception in this situation cannot be overstated. Drake has cultivated a persona that balances commercial success with cultural credibility. For years, he has been able to navigate multiple spheres: mainstream pop charts, streaming dominance, and underground hip-hop credibility. By filing an appeal, he risks shifting how audiences evaluate his approach to conflict. Some fans may view the move as strategic and necessary, emphasizing responsibility and foresight. Others may see it as defensive, an attempt to retroactively control a narrative that was already viral. In a culture where authenticity and confidence are highly valued, the perception of overreaction can carry as much weight as the substance of the legal strategy itself. The interplay between law and culture is particularly notable in this case. In traditional hip-hop conflicts, diss tracks, freestyle battles, and public interviews historically served as the main avenues for resolution. These interactions allowed artists to control their messaging and maintain dominance in a relatively flexible cultural framework. Legal proceedings, however, operate under very different rules. They are formal, procedural, and permanent. By entering the courtroom, Drake transforms a cultural dispute into a legal one, which requires evidence, documentation, and precise articulation of claims. Every filing is public record, creating a permanent digital footprint. This contrasts sharply with the ephemeral nature of music releases and online content, which can be recontextualized, deleted, or reframed. In effect, the appeal introduces a tension between the impermanence of cultural perception and the permanence of legal documentation. Timing and strategy also play critical roles. Legal experts note that appeals are not quick fixes. They are procedural instruments designed to challenge or reconsider previous judgments, but they often take months, if not years, to resolve. This delay has strategic implications for Drake. On one hand, it allows him to signal persistence and assert control. On the other hand, the extended timeline prolongs public attention, keeping the song, the lawsuit, and the cultural debate alive in a way that could overshadow his other projects. Every interview, public appearance, or music release is now contextualized against the backdrop of the ongoing appeal. Fans, media outlets, and critics interpret actions through the lens of this legal drama, creating an environment in which perception and reputation are continuously contested. Audience engagement in this context operates on multiple levels. Hardcore fans may analyze lyrics for hidden meaning or perceive legal filings as strategic extensions of Drake's artistry. Casual listeners may focus on drama, entertainment, or the spectacle of high-profile conflict. Social media users amplify their reactions through memes, reaction videos, and commentary, creating a decentralized yet highly influential feedback loop. The algorithms that govern visibility prioritize content that generates engagement, which means that the most emotionally charged interpretations gain traction. As a result, the appeal does not exist in isolation. It exists as part of a larger ecosystem where public interpretation actively shapes the narrative, sometimes as much as the legal outcome itself. Perception is further complicated by the cultural weight of Kendrick Lamar's presence in the dispute. As an artist, Kendrick carries significant influence and is widely respected for lyrical skill, social commentary, and cultural impact. This creates a high bar for Drake's positioning. Any legal action is interpreted not only in terms of the song itself, but also in comparison to Kendrick's broader legacy. Audiences evaluate intent, credibility, and strategy relative to the cultural stature of both artists. This comparative evaluation influences everything from streaming behavior to social media sentiment, reinforcing the idea that legal maneuvers cannot be assessed in isolation from cultural context. Historical precedent within hip-hop also frames the conversation. Conflicts have long been mediated by reputation, lyricism, and public perception, with few instances escalating to formal legal battles of this magnitude. Drake's decision to appeal demonstrates how the genre has evolved in the digital age. Intellectual property disputes, label influence, and corporate oversight now intersect with cultural performance in ways that were previously uncommon. High-profile artists must now navigate a hybrid ecosystem where legal strategy and public perception operate in parallel, each influencing the other. In this environment, even minor missteps can carry outsized consequences, while well-calculated actions can redefine norms. The balance between risk and reward is critical. A successful appeal could solidify Drake's control over the song, affirm his legal standing, and reinforce his authority within the industry. Conversely, the ongoing visibility of the lawsuit ensures that every detail, filing, public statement, or reaction remains a potential source of criticism. In hip-hop culture, perception often outweighs technical victories. Fans interpret persistence as either strength or insecurity, depending on the framing. By filing an appeal, Drake places himself in a position where both positive and negative interpretations are amplified, and he must navigate the delicate balance between legal necessity and cultural optics. Another dimension involves the economic implications of the dispute. High-profile artists like Drake rely on multiple revenue streams: streaming, touring, brand partnerships, and collaborations. Public perception directly impacts these streams. Negative sentiment or perception of overreach could influence streaming behavior, concert ticket sales, or brand alignment. Conversely, the sustained attention generated by the appeal could drive engagement, streams, and visibility, creating a paradox where controversy simultaneously threatens and reinforces commercial outcomes. In the modern music industry, these interdependencies between culture, perception, and economics are inseparable, making strategic decisions like appeals both high-stakes and complex. The psychological element cannot be ignored. Public conflict, especially one that is prolonged and highly visible, exerts pressure on both artists and their teams. Maintaining composure, messaging consistency, and strategic focus becomes a central challenge. Fans and critics often interpret composure, or the lack thereof, as evidence of confidence, authenticity, or control. By entering a legal arena that is formal and highly scrutinized, Drake commits to a narrative in which every move will be analyzed for meaning, tone, and intent. Unlike a diss track or interview, legal filings offer little room for reinterpretation, making each action permanent and highly visible. The broader cultural implications are equally significant. This appeal exemplifies how modern hip-hop interacts with legal systems, corporate oversight, and digital culture. What once may have been a conflict resolved on the streets, in interviews, or through artistic response, now requires navigation of institutional structures that intersect with perception, media amplification, and fan interpretation. The case highlights how music is no longer purely cultural expression. It is also a strategic and legally mediated practice that shapes and is shaped by audience engagement. In this context, artists operate under conditions where creativity, legal strategy, and cultural resonance are tightly intertwined. The ongoing debate highlights another reality. Influence is cumulative. Drake's long career, extensive catalog, and cultural imprint allow him a degree of resilience. Yet even established influence does not insulate him from perception risk. Each new development, every legal filing, headline, or social media reaction, interacts with existing narratives to create a layered, ongoing interpretation of both his career and his response to conflict. The audience, media, and algorithm-driven platforms actively construct this narrative, creating a feedback loop that ensures the story will remain highly visible for months or even years. Ultimately, the appeal underscores a fundamental tension between control and visibility. Legal action is intended to exert control over outcomes, protect interests, and assert authority. Yet the very act of filing ensures visibility, exposure, and ongoing public engagement. In a media environment where perception can shape legacy as much as legal victories, every procedural move becomes a cultural event. Drake's strategy will be interpreted not only in terms of its legal merit, but also in terms of how it aligns with cultural expectations, artistic identity, and audience perception. As this unfolds, the implications for future conflicts in hip-hop are profound. Artists observing the situation may reconsider how they address disputes, whether to rely on formal legal channels, and how audience engagement can amplify or undermine strategy. The case illustrates that modern disputes are multidimensional, requiring attention not just to artistic expression and legal procedure, but also to algorithmic amplification, public perception, and cultural resonance. The outcome of Drake's appeal will reverberate far beyond a single track, influencing how artists, labels, and fans navigate similar conflicts in the future. The appeal has not only prolonged the public conversation around Not Like Us, but has also shifted the dynamics of influence in modern hip-hop. When conflicts move from music into formal legal spaces, the stakes are magnified. Every statement, every filing, and every reaction becomes a reference point, not just for the immediate dispute, but for the broader cultural narrative. In Drake's case, this move demonstrates that artistic conflicts are no longer confined to verses, albums, or interviews. They now unfold across legal, social, and media landscapes simultaneously. This shift forces artists, fans, and industry stakeholders to reassess how power, control, and reputation operate in the digital era. One of the most striking aspects of the appeal is how it interacts with audience behavior. In contemporary hip-hop culture, the audience functions as both participant and amplifier. Social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube not only distribute information but shape interpretation. Memes, reaction videos, commentary threads, and clips of interviews create layers of context that influence how the lawsuit is understood. Fans do not passively observe. They actively engage, debate, and assign meaning. Each reaction, share, or remix contributes to the perception of Drake's credibility, strategy, and cultural positioning. This creates a complex ecosystem in which legal strategy cannot be separated from cultural interpretation. The prolonged attention also highlights the delicate balance between legal procedure and public narrative. Appeals are inherently slow, often taking months to resolve, but in the age of streaming and viral content, slow does not mean invisible. The delay ensures that the story remains front and center in online discussions, allowing critics to scrutinize every development and supporters to rally behind Drake's perceived tenacity. However, extended visibility carries risk. In hip-hop culture, public perception often carries more weight than formal outcomes. If fans interpret the appeal as reactive or defensive rather than strategic, it can undermine the authority and confidence Drake has cultivated over years. The court of public opinion can amplify missteps, turning minor legal maneuvers into major cultural talking points. Timing is another critical element in how this appeal unfolds. Not Like Us had already cemented its presence across streaming platforms and social media before the appeal was filed. Its viral trajectory ensured that the song was more than a single release. It became a cultural event. By filing an appeal, Drake reintroduces the controversy at a time when public attention could have moved on to other releases, collaborations, or industry stories. This timing ensures the track, the lawsuit, and the ensuing debates remain intertwined. Every new headline, leak, or reaction video now reinforces the connection between the song and the legal dispute. In essence, Drake is leveraging visibility, but also accepting the accompanying scrutiny, knowing that prolonged attention is both an asset and a liability. Public perception also interacts with expectations rooted in hip-hop culture. Historically, resilience, confidence, and artistic skill have been primary indicators of credibility. Diss tracks and battles were traditionally evaluated on lyrical quality, delivery, and the ability to maintain composure. Entering the legal arena introduces a different set of metrics: formality, strategy, and procedural correctness. These two modes do not always align neatly. Actions that appear prudent in court may be interpreted as cautious or defensive by fans. Drake's challenge is to navigate these dual frameworks, ensuring that legal strategy does not erode the cultural authority he has built over more than a decade. Comparisons with Kendrick Lamar further complicate perception. Kendrick is widely regarded as a master of lyrical depth, cultural commentary, and strategic engagement. In public debates, the audience often evaluates Drake's moves relative to Kendrick's reputation and past actions. The perception of success or failure is therefore contextual, shaped by a comparison between the two artists' influence, credibility, and cultural positioning. This comparative framework amplifies the stakes of the appeal, as each procedural move is filtered through the lens of who has greater long-term cultural authority. The legal process itself introduces layers of exposure. Appeals require meticulous attention to detail, referencing prior filings, procedural arguments, and interpretations of copyright or contractual obligations. Unlike the dynamic, adaptable nature of music releases, legal documents are fixed, permanent, and publicly accessible. Every filing, statement, or motion can be scrutinized by fans, journalists, and industry observers. This permanence transforms legal strategy into cultural content, where each document contributes to the ongoing narrative of credibility, influence, and intention. Drake's legal team, must therefore account for both the technical and cultural ramifications of their approach, understanding that every procedural choice is observed through multiple interpretive lenses. Economic considerations are equally intertwined with cultural perception. High-profile artists like Drake rely on streaming revenue, tour, collaborations, and endorsements. Public engagement with the song and the lawsuit can influence these streams directly. Controversy often drives visibility, increasing streams and media attention, but negative perception risks damaging brand partnerships or future collaborations. In modern hip-hop, cultural influence and economic opportunity are inseparable, creating a feedback loop in which public interpretation shapes financial outcomes, and financial outcomes, in turn, reinforce public perception. The appeal exists within this ecosystem, meaning that legal, cultural, and economic factors are intertwined. Another layer of complexity comes from historical precedent. Previous high-profile hip-hop conflicts have rarely intersected with formal legal proceedings to this extent. Traditionally, artists managed disputes through lyrical responses, public interviews, or social media commentary. Drake's legal approach illustrates how the digital era has altered conflict resolution in music. With streaming, instant social media engagement, and permanent online records, disputes now unfold across multiple arenas simultaneously. Legal filings, audience interpretation, media amplification, and cultural evaluation all operate in parallel, creating a multi-dimensional environment where strategic choices carry amplified consequences. Perception is further influenced by psychological factors. Audiences closely watch how artists respond to prolonged conflicts. Composure, clarity, and perceived confidence become indicators of credibility. In this case, every reaction from Drake, every public statement, and every social media engagement is interpreted not only for content, but for tone, intent, and strategic sophistication. Unlike a diss track, which can be reframed, remixed, or reinterpreted creatively, legal filings provide a fixed record of action. This permanence heightens the stakes, as minor procedural details can be amplified, criticized, or misrepresented in public discourse. The interplay between visibility and legacy is another critical factor. Hip-hop audiences are deeply attuned to reputation and cultural influence. Drake's career is extensive, spanning multiple eras and musical trends. The appeal adds a new dimension to how his legacy is perceived, as it introduces a formal, highly visible component to a dispute that was originally artistic. Fans and critics alike are evaluating him not just as a musician, but as a cultural actor navigating the complex intersections of artistry, law, and public perception. The appeal will contribute to long-term narratives about Drake's influence, decision-making, and resilience. Social media dynamics also reinforce this effect. Platforms are structured to reward engagement, controversy, and virality. Every meme, reaction video, or discussion thread is amplified algorithmically, reinforcing prevailing narratives. Fans often adopt dominant interpretations, creating herd behavior that further entrenches particular perspectives. In Drake's case, this means that interpretations of the appeal, whether positive or negative, are amplified beyond their original scope. The story becomes less about legal technicalities and more about perception, emotion, and cultural positioning. The appeal also underscores the evolving relationship between artists and corporate entities. Drake is navigating a dispute that involves UMG, a major record label with significant influence over distribution, rights, and business strategy. Legal action in this context is not purely individual. It intersects with corporate strategy, contractual obligations, and long-term business interests. Each procedural decision is therefore a negotiation between personal strategy, cultural influence, and institutional power. The public observes these dynamics through a cultural lens, translating legal maneuvers into commentary on credibility, influence, and artistic authority. Ultimately, the situation illustrates the complexity of modern influence in music. Traditional markers of success, streams, chart positions, lyrical skill, interact with perception, legal strategy, and cultural interpretation. In a digital, algorithm-driven ecosystem, visibility is both an asset and a risk. Drake's appeal exemplifies how every action in this ecosystem carries multiple meanings, simultaneously affecting reputation, financial opportunity, and cultural positioning. The case demonstrates that contemporary hip-hop conflicts are no longer linear. They unfold across interdependent spheres that demand careful navigation, foresight, and strategic awareness. This ongoing saga also has implications for the broader music industry. Artists, managers, labels, and fans are observing closely, learning how conflicts, legal disputes, and audience engagement intersect in the digital era. Future disputes may be influenced by the strategies employed here. As stakeholders adjust to the reality that perception, law, and culture now operate simultaneously, the appeal functions not just as a defense for Drake, but as a cultural moment that shapes expectations for how artists navigate high-stakes conflicts in the future. As attention continues, the story demonstrates that modern hip-hop disputes are as much about perception as they are about substance. The legal, social, and economic dimensions are inseparable from cultural interpretation. Fans act as arbiters, media acts as amplifier, and algorithms act as accelerant. In this ecosystem, the appeal is not simply a procedural move. It is a highly visible, multi-dimensional event that influences reputation, authority, and influence. Every subsequent development, whether a filing, a statement, or a reaction, feeds into this narrative, ensuring that the story remains central to the discourse surrounding both Drake and Kendrick Lamar. The continued fallout from Drake's appeal in the Not Like Us lawsuit highlights the unprecedented pressures faced by modern artists operating at the intersection of music, culture, and law. What began as a viral diss track has now become a long-running saga that tests public perception, algorithmic amplification, and strategic decision-making simultaneously. Unlike traditional music conflicts resolved through lyrical responses or social media banter, this situation demands sustained engagement across multiple platforms, requiring constant attention from fans, media outlets, and industry observers. Every move Drake makes is evaluated in real time, and every development, from court filings to interviews to social media commentary, has the potential to shift audience sentiment dramatically. One of the most significant consequences of the appeal is the way it prolongs public scrutiny. The digital ecosystem thrives on ongoing narratives, and the longer a story remains visible, the greater the engagement it generates. Social media algorithms, streaming metrics, and news coverage all feed into this cycle. Fans create content ranging from reaction videos and lyric breakdowns to memes and discussion threads, amplifying the attention far beyond what traditional media could achieve. In this environment, the appeal does more than assert a legal position. It actively fuels public discourse, ensuring that Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and the Not Like Us controversy remains central to cultural conversation for months, if not years. This prolonged visibility introduces a unique set of challenges. Drake's career has been defined by a careful balance of mainstream appeal, cultural relevance, and personal branding. By moving the conflict into legal channels, he risks reframing the narrative in ways that may not align with audience expectations. Fans often perceive confidence, resilience, and control as key indicators of artistic authority. If the appeal is interpreted as reactive or defensive, it could undermine the credibility he has built over the years. Unlike musical releases, legal filings cannot be edited, re-released, or reinterpreted creatively. They are fixed records, and their public nature magnifies every detail. Timing remains a critical factor in how this legal battle influences perception. Not Like Us had already achieved widespread virality before the appeal, generating streams, social media engagement, and extensive media coverage. By filing the appeal after this wave, Drake ensures the controversy remains alive, but he also risks overexposure. In a culture that prizes brevity and novelty, maintaining relevance without appearing overly reactive requires careful management of both public relations and audience perception. Each subsequent article, video, or commentary thread now reinforces the association between the song and the lawsuit, creating a feedback loop that extends the story's reach while simultaneously raising the stakes. Public interpretation of Drake's actions is influenced heavily by comparisons to Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick's reputation as a lyricist, cultural commentator, and strategic thinker sets a high standard against which Drake's moves are evaluated. Every procedural step in the appeal is interpreted not only in isolation, but relative to Kendrick's legacy and cultural authority. Fans and critics alike assess the dispute through this comparative lens, weighing legal strategy against artistic credibility. In this context, the appeal is as much about maintaining cultural positioning as it is about legal outcomes, requiring careful consideration of both substance and optics. The structure of modern audience engagement amplifies this effect. Fans do not simply consume content, they interpret, remix, and propagate it across multiple channels. Reaction videos, comment threads, TikTok compilations, and social media debates all create a decentralized but highly influential ecosystem that shapes collective understanding. Algorithms prioritize content that drives engagement, often rewarding controversy, debate, and emotional intensity. Consequently, the appeal becomes a central node in an ongoing narrative that extends far beyond the courtroom. Each new filing, statement, or development interacts with these digital feedback loops, reinforcing certain interpretations while challenging others. The legal process itself introduces permanent layers of exposure. Appeals require detailed review of prior filings, procedural arguments, and evidence. Unlike a diss track, which can be interpreted flexibly, remixed, or recontextualized, legal documents are fixed and public. Every motion, argument, or brief is accessible to fans, media, and critics, making them part of the ongoing cultural conversation. In this way, the appeal functions both as a formal legal action and as cultural content, where even technical details are scrutinized, interpreted, and shared widely. Financial implications are deeply intertwined with this process. High-profile artists like Drake rely on multiple revenue streams, including streaming, tour, collaborations, and brand partnerships. Public perception directly affects these income sources. Controversy can increase visibility, streams, and media attention, but negative perception or perceived overreach could influence brand relationships or future collaborations. This interconnection between cultural influence and financial outcome means that every strategic move in the appeal carries both economic and reputational stakes, reinforcing the complex, high-pressure environment in which modern artists operate. The evolution of hip-hop conflict resolution is another key factor in understanding the appeal. Historically, disputes were resolved through music, public appearances, and interpersonal negotiation. Social standing, reputation, and lyrical skill determined the outcome more than formal mechanisms. Today, legal action has become a viable tool for resolving disputes, reflecting the increased stakes in intellectual property, corporate involvement, and digital content distribution. Drake's appeal illustrates this transformation, highlighting the interplay between artistry, law, and digital culture. It is no longer sufficient to dominate lyrically. Artists must also navigate procedural and strategic landscapes that were largely irrelevant in previous eras. Psychological and strategic factors also play a major role. Public perception in prolonged conflicts depends on composure, messaging, and the perceived credibility of actions. Fans and critics interpret tone, timing, and intent as indicators of confidence and authority. Legal filings, in particular, are permanent, leaving little room for reinterpretation or creative framing. Every procedural choice becomes a public signal, contributing to broader assessments of Drake's approach, cultural standing, and decision-making. This heightened visibility increases pressure on both artists and their teams to act strategically while maintaining consistency in messaging. Cultural context further intensifies scrutiny. Hip-hop audiences are highly attuned to reputation, influence, and artistic authority. Drake's appeal is interpreted not only as a legal maneuver, but also as a reflection of his broader approach to conflict, resilience, and industry influence. Fans contextualize his actions against past decisions, career trajectory, and perceived cultural authority. Every development in the appeal is filtered through these lenses, creating a complex interplay of legal, cultural, and perceptual consequences. The narrative surrounding Drake's actions extends beyond legal technicalities, encompassing reputation, influence, and audience interpretation. Social media amplification is a powerful force in this scenario. Algorithms prioritize engagement, controversy, and discussion, ensuring that content related to the appeal reaches maximum visibility. Fans adopt prevailing interpretations, generating collective narratives that may or may not align with legal realities. In Drake's case, the appeal functions as both a strategic legal tool and a driver of public discourse, reinforcing the idea that perception, engagement, and visibility are inseparable from formal outcomes. Each filing, statement, or interview contributes to the ongoing story, amplifying its reach while shaping the collective understanding of the conflict. Institutional dynamics also add complexity. Drake's dispute involves not only his personal interests, but also corporate entities like UMG, which have their own strategic priorities, legal resources, and business objectives. Navigating these relationships requires balancing personal, cultural, and institutional considerations. Public interpretation often simplifies these dynamics, evaluating actions through the lens of cultural authority rather than institutional strategy. This dual reality highlights the challenges of operating simultaneously in legal, cultural, and business arenas. Ultimately, the appeal demonstrates how modern influence operates in music. Success is no longer measured solely by streams, chart positions, or lyrical skill. It is also measured by how well an artist navigates perception, strategy, and algorithmic amplification. Drake's appeal exemplifies this multidimensional reality, showing that every action, whether legal, cultural, or social, carries consequences across multiple domains. The narrative is continuously constructed by fans, media, and algorithms, making the story as much about interpretation and visibility as about formal outcomes. This situation also sets a precedent for future conflicts. Artists, managers, and labels are observing how Drake navigates the interplay between music, law, and public perception. Future disputes may be informed by strategies employed here, demonstrating how legal actions, public narrative, and cultural influence intersect. The case shows that modern music disputes are multi-layered, requiring attention to artistic expression, legal strategy, audience engagement, and algorithmic amplification simultaneously. As this story continues to unfold, it is clear that the appeal is more than a procedural maneuver. It is a cultural event, a strategic communication, and a test of influence. Every subsequent development, from legal filings to media coverage to fan reactions, contributes to the ongoing narrative surrounding Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and Not Like Us. Visibility, interpretation, and engagement are now central to the story, highlighting the inseparable relationship between culture, law, and audience perception. In the end, the saga illustrates that modern hip-hop conflicts are no longer linear. They are dynamic, multidimensional, and shaped by a complex ecosystem of social, cultural, and technological forces. Drake's appeal, by maintaining high visibility, prolonging debate, and intersecting with audience interpretation, demonstrates how influence in the digital era extends far beyond the music itself. Each development reinforces the idea that in contemporary music, perception, engagement, and strategic action operate alongside artistry, forming a new framework for understanding cultural authority and legacy. If you've been following this Drake versus Kendrick Lamar saga, now is the moment to stay tuned because the story is far from over. The Not Like Us appeal isn't just a legal battle. It's a cultural earthquake shaking hip-hop, streaming platforms, and social media alike. Every filing, every reaction, every meme contributes to a narrative that's shaping the legacy of two of the biggest names in music today. And here's the thing. Whether you're a diehard fan, a casual listener, or someone who loves drama, this story affects how we all consume music, interpret lyrics, and watch artists navigate influence in real time. Streaming numbers, chart positions, and social media trends will continue to shift with every new development. Drake's legal strategy could redefine how artists approach conflicts, how labels protect their interests, and how audiences engage with music controversies in the digital age. If you want to understand the full impact of what's happening, you need to be following the updates closely because the next filing, the next statement, or the next public reaction could change everything. So here's what you need to do. Hit that follow, subscribe, or notification button so you don't miss a single development. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Drake's appeal is a smart move, or is it going to backfire? Share this video or post with your friends and spark debates on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter. This isn't just about music. It's about culture, influence, and understanding the digital era of hip-hop. Trust us, you don't want to be the last to find out what happens next. The story is unfolding, and you can be part of it. Engage, share, comment, and stay plugged in, because this is one controversy that's going to dominate feeds for months to come.